Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Per Lagur, and I will be your host. Today's podcast guest is Adam Donnelly. Adam is the Area Regional Health and Safety Risk Superintendent for Canadian-based projects for Redpath Mining. Adam joins us with over 15 years experience in heavy mining and metals. Adam is also an employer-based representative on the WorkSafe NB's board of directors. Welcome, Adam.
Well, thank you for having me, Pearlie.
To date, we've never had a guest to discuss mining health and safety, which undoubtedly is very different from what other health and safety professionals would experience in their industry. Let's start our discussion by getting you to tell our audience a little bit more about your background and experience. Who is Adam Donnelly?
Sure. So once again, I'm from a small town in New Brunswick. I'm actually from Jacket River, New Brunswick. My both parents worked their entire careers at the Brunswick Mining and Smelting, which is essentially the smelter off branch, right, of the division of the mines. I had the opportunity to work there as well. Actually, I worked there for about 4 years. I didn't really, I liked smelting, but I knew it wasn't for me. I was looking for more. So, I ended up taking my Common Core, which was your minimum requirements set forth by the Ontario government to certify you to work in mines in Ontario. And lo and behold, at that time, mining was on the boom. So I did get hired through a great organization at that time, another great contractor, by the name of DMC Mining Services. So, I go out to Ontario. At that time, we were over in Jansen, Saskatchewan, and I ended up being there for 5.5 years on a world-renowned shaft sinking project. Now, when I say shaft sinking project, what I mean by that is pretty simple. We are sinking a shaft, 2,000 to 3,000 meters straight deep into the ground in order to get to that ore body, which at that time, that ore body is potash. In Saskatchewan, that was a potash mine, like most of them are. That was a great journey. 5.5 years there. I grew through the ranks, of course. I started as a deckman, which is, slinging your gear and making sure that the gear that you have to send down to the miners, are strapped properly, secured properly. 10-to-1 safety ratio if there's anything being slung or hung vertical down a shaft, because quite frankly, overhead loads is a fatal risk in mining. But calculated, mitigated, and properly rated slinging and rigging is how we mitigate that risk with competent and qualified riggers. So then after, Pearlie, after I started moving through the ranks, lo and behold, I was asked to go down into the shaft as a shaft miner. And a lot of the different things we do down there, depending on position, you can run a plugger, which is essentially a pretty large drill, drilling into the rock mass formation on the bench, which is your shaft bottom, also known as the bench. And you're drilling plugger holes, right? And you're setting up, for blasting, for ground support geology. Also, other items in the shaft could be such as, you're pouring a curb ring. And essentially what I mean by that is as you're developing the shaft and you're slowly getting deeper and deeper, you're pouring yourself a concrete liner above you, and then you break that form, and then you continue to go down. So it's a form of ground support as you advance and sink, so to speak. As you get deeper, the upper levels above you have adequate concrete, reinforced rebar, burlap, so to speak, as you're, getting deeper, because 3,000 meters comes pretty quickly, believe it or not. And soon when you're looking up from the bottom of the shaft, all you see is basically, it looks like a small white little pinhole. And that is surface, when you're standing on the shaft bottom. And you know what, just to keep moving on that, I was lucky. I had amazing mentors. I have people in my mentorship. I remember gentlemen like Lorne McCullough, that he's a shaft sinking legend. I had Tom Hennessy. I had Ralph Beach. I had a lot of great mentors in the shaft, which I believe helped me progress to who I am today. After I was in the shaft, of course, lo and behold, a safety position did become available. And I've had, I do have some a pretty robust set of education, but I didn't really emphasize that in the shaft because in the shaft, it's not really needed. But when other positions came up, I applied for a health and safety training position. And I was lucky enough to get that position. So that kind of embarked me now into the safety side of shaft sinking. And, I don't know, up and away. I just kept working hard, and valuing the IRS, following the OH&S Act, the Mining Act specific to the province I was in, working very closely with the clients that own these projects and discussing what their deliverables are and what their expectations are of us to work on their properties. And it truly turned into just a great working relationship, right? I always say, respect earned is respect deserved. And it became such an easy transition for me to go from minor to mid-level manager and now to a senior manager. And it's all about the way you treat people, Pearly. My opinion is nobody's going to remember the name on my door in 20 years, but they're going to remember the way that I treated them. So, there's a little bit of luck in this too. People don't want to say it and people don't want to admit it, but timing in life, there is an aspect to good timing and being in the right place at the right time. There's an aspect to intuition and just being in the moment and saying, God, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. I can feel it, right? Mm-hmm. That was a little bit of my journey. Of course, I can take you on a longer journey. I left there. I went to Vancouver Island. In mining, it's so transient. You end up in contract mining. You could be at 5 mines in 10 months, right? And 5 mines in 5 different parts of Canada.
How many mines you are currently responsible for right now with Redpath?
Yeah, so the two I fall under, so my area manager, that gentleman has a plethora of projects. We had 3, now we only have 2 essentially. Now that's not Redpath, that's just my umbrella. So okay. Typically it's the Newmont Musselwhite project, which is outside of Pickle Lake, Ontario, outside of Thunder Bay. And then the other project that I also have accountabilities on would be the Labrador Voisey's Bay Valley property.
Okay, well, tell us a little more about each of those projects and what your involvement is.
Sure. So at Newmont, essentially what's happening there is we do high speed development for our clients. So we tend to range from having 3 to 6 faces to work on. And by a face, the underground, a face is where it has to continue to progress and get developed, right? To find an ore body or should I say the ore body is there. We're continuing to blast it, bolt it, blast it, and then pull it out of the mine for concentrate, or should I say for processing. So Redpath has right now at Musselwhite, let's say 100 plus employees currently. It's divided into 2 sections. We have our high-speed development miners, and then what we have is called our construction miners. Because at Voisey Bay, at Newmont Musselwhite, we did take on a pretty robust construction project. Newmont is such a fantastic client. Their values and Redpath's values align. They don't believe that at the end, they don't believe that you have to take a risk to perform your job. They don't believe in that. They believe that deviations and delays from the projected schedule due to the cost of making the job safe is supported on behalf of Redpath management, and also Newmont supports us as well. So what we have is we have the high-speed development project, which we're advancing and bolting, screening, blasting, mucking, bolting, screening, blasting, mucking as the cycle continues. Actually, they just gave us 600 more meters of that, if my memory serves me correctly. As for the construction side, we are building 5 enormous, they're called AMD doors, but essentially we're expanding their ventilation underground. We're at a deeper section of the mine, and we're trying to provide adequate CFM to the lower levels of the mine as we advance. And because as you get deeper in a mine, of course, it's very known. It gets a little bit hotter. You have to continue extending your downcast ventilation. So the client has gave us a project called Vent at Depth. And essentially, we are the prime contractor for them, and we're extending their ventilation, building bulkhead doors, shotcreting these doors in place. And there's a technical side to all that, Pearly. You know, we have to have the adequate engineers in place. We're doing measurements. We're pouring concrete slabs. We're doing a lot of rebar work, and we're doing this all 2,000 meters below the Earth's surface. None of this is done on surface, right? So yeah, there is challenges, right, to underground, and I can walk you through some of those as well, right?
Yeah, what's it like working in an underground mine? For people that have never been in a mine, to give it a little bit of context, a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to go down in the potash mine in Sussex. And I guess as you're going down in the elevator and you start to realize how far down you're going, then you get off the elevator and you start to realize, and as they tell you that anything that's down there came down through the elevator. Yeah. And then you start to realize that it's totally different world down there than it is up top. Tell us about that and your experiences.
Sure. So bottom line, you say the elevator, sure, they were taking you, there's two ways to enter a mine. I'll keep it simple. First is a portal. So as a portal is a hole driven into some form of rock mass, into a mountain, into some form of geology, and then it would go down a mine, typically on a -15 to a -17 grade. So then as you're entering the portal, right, and it might eventually always turn like this, Pearly, depending on the ground support management plan. But at the end of the day, it's a -15 typically to a -17 is in terms of grade. Or slope. Now that's the portal. What you just described was they had a man basket. They would have had a double man cage, I presume, at PCS Piccadilly. And that's another way where they have shafts for man travel, or they could also have shafts for mucking and skipping of the ore. So it could be two different sets of head frames as well, depending on the client. But yeah, what you described there, you're going down probably around 750 to 1,000 feet per minute, by the way, if you were in that cage. So you don't see much. All you're probably seeing are a lot of guides and levels, and it's going fairly fast. It's like an elevator, in a sense, like if you were on this, in a large rise and you're going up to level 116. But at the end of the day, as you could see, you could probably see a few of the, I always say the guides or the, timber sets as you were going down, the cage. Okay. So yeah, after you get down there, there's where the meat and potatoes start. First of all, you're getting out of the cage, and what are we looking at here? And what you're looking at is you're often getting off on a sub level. It could be called 2,400, 2,600. When you're getting off of these sub levels that are always typically written based off the depth that you are. Guess what? Cap lamps come on, and a lot of people now being aware of your surroundings. Where am I? What am I stepping on? Some levels you get off, it could be a track drift where there's essentially railroads, there for the locomotives to pull out some of the ore or some of their products that are in their respected headings. But you got to know where you are. You got to be aware of your surroundings. And even for the cage, like you said, there's a cage man there, and he's running the bells, because the bells is a universal language that doesn't have to be spoken between the cage tender and the hoist operator. It's a form of nonverbal communication that's universal in mining that says, oh, he just gave me a one. A one means stop. I'm going to answer back that one, and then that means it's safe for you to get off that cage. So even the person on the cage, if you've done that, they're qualified and certified to be a cage tender, right?
Okay.
But yeah, you're getting off and you're probably noticing, it's a little bit darker than you thought. You're putting on your cap lamp right about now. Depending on the mine, you're going to say, if it's PCS, I would imagine you'd say, ooh, it's warm down here. Now, why is PCS warm and other mines aren't? Well, PCS is warm because it's a potash mine, and quite frankly, it's room and pillar method. It's a different type of mining that they're doing. They're doing room and pillar. So essentially, I want you to think of it as 4 squares like this. They mine out 4 squares at a time with a continuous miner. I call it a hands-free mechanized form of mining. It's a little bit easier on the hands versus the old conventional style mining. But then, of course, change the type of mine you're in. Then you could have came over to myself at the copper hard rock mine, or gold mine, should I say, Newmont Musselwhite. When I take you 2,000 meters in the ground, you get out of a Toyota, you're going to say, geez, what a nice temperature. I'm not too hot. I'm not too cold. It all depends on the geology that we're mining through. And it depends on how good our ventilation is that depicts the precipitation, or should I say the temperature in a mine. Yeah.
Now, you're down in a mine. You travel what distance in that mine underground?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question. So at Newmont, we did a study at Caribou Mine, and this is going to be great. After the supervisor drives into the portal and he goes down to his respected levels, 64 kilometers in 12 hours was what we have at Newmont Musselwhite.
Wow.
So that's a 12 hour. So times that by 2, because there's a cross shift coming in. So you might as well say 125 kilometers in 24 hours is what our shifters are driving around checking on their respected headings, right? Because a supervisor's job, it's so important, and it's so appreciated, I know, on behalf of myself and my management team. They are always checking in on the active headings within their control. And they're also, you know what, sometimes they're gathering gear, like if there's people missing gear and then there's those unplanned breakdowns, a supervisor has to be everywhere in the mine, actively checking on on the coordination of the work that he assigned. So you're going to see him everywhere, him or her, by the way, because we're a non-biased organization where we have female haul truck operators underground. We at Redpath, we don't discriminate. We absolutely we want female skilled labor in our mines working with us, quite frankly. So anyway, 64 to 65 kilometers a shift, and they're running around at all their active headings, and they're having field-worthy conversations surrounding health, safety, risk, and the Neil George 5-point card. And we have an FLHA that every employee has, where we verify and check on the workplace conditions at time of entry. We verify if there's any safety concerns that individual has. We turn the card over, and we actually go over the job was assigned, and that individual would have had to apply a field level hazard assessment, mini JHA. I know the acronyms, everybody goes, geez, what are these acronyms? I'll keep it simple. Every employee has the privilege and the duty and the responsibility to create a mini FLHA, which is a JHA, on the task that they were provided on that given morning. And that's our expectation. The days of going to work are over. Get to work, Pearly. No, those days are over. You have a due diligence to fill out that card in thorough and in depth. And the supervisor, when he enters your heading 3 hours later, we're going to have a conversation. We're not going to talk about production. First, we're going to have a conversation about the workplace conditions from the headers back into that person's work heading. And then after the 15 minutes is over, yes, we will have a conversation about where we are in the cycle and what can be done to help that individual.
And, excuse me, do you find your employees are receptive to that level of health and safety?
You know what I do? I'm going to talk about Redpath. I know everybody's going to tell you, window dressing, but I've worked in 15 years for contractors. And you know what? At Redpath, what I will say is that people have a very simplistic and easy way to speak up because they know they're supported. Like when you have good managers, and it's all about having good frontline managers that truly care. They practice active, genuine care for their employees. And that's when it starts to become trust gets built. And then all of a sudden, after trust gets built, a camaraderie sets in. And then all of a sudden, we all become one. We all unite. We're impartial. And we look at the event, not the person. And that's what I want to say. We look at the event. So yeah, I find my employees are very receptive to the health and safety. Now, of course, there's a few bad apples. We've all had them. We're human, right? I always say the old expression, I'm a safety professional. There's great safety professionals. There's great doctors. You've met a few great doctors. Pearlie, have you met a few doctors that you'll scratch your head walking out of the hospital? Have we met a few lawyers that we scratched our head saying, I don't know if that person really, it's because we're human, right? Mm-hmm. But the point of my little rant is I do believe that the Redpath employees are very, very receptive of us having conversations because of our approach. I'm not a safety cop, Pearlie, and I got news for you. I don't have to tell my men to put their glasses on. That's 1970s safety. And I'm throwing it out there because the men know they have the right and the privilege to wear their glasses, where Pearlie, I bet your father, God bless him if he's still alive, maybe he wasn't given the privilege to work safely. Like, we're at a very different time right now. I say to myself, isn't it amazing that all these companies are giving us 15 to 20 minutes every shift to perform our job and our workplace inspections and our hazard review and potential hazard review instead of just pushing us into work? I said, what a privilege to be a part of. They really care about us, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just a rubber stamp on a card, because I know my father, he might not have been given that privilege.
No, that's right. Now, a couple of questions. As a safety person, you're going into the mine, you're going and observing what's happening. What are some of the hazards that you would be looking for in a mine setting?
Sure. So I'm going to start with when I get out of the Toyota, because I want to be honest. When we go into a mine, Pearlie, usually you're in a Toyota to go through the portal, depending on if that portal or mine has safety bays. So I'll give you a little legislation. A safety bay is an area to protect mobile equipment from human interaction. So it's a section every 30 meters or 100 feet that's legislated, where essentially an individual can step into that safety bay. It's usually a 6x6x5, and they can step in, and that way they're a loud piece of mobile equipment, large and loud, haul trucks, boom trucks, scissor decks, scoop trams. They have a place to protect themselves. So if first of all the portal has safety bays, okay, at least I can walk the ramp as long as I notify dispatch. If I was walking that ramp, first thing I'd be looking at is my services, okay? So I'm looking up at my services. I'm making sure that I have my air and my water line strapped securely, 2 lengths per pipe, secured up to the rabbit ears or to the shouldered eye bolts, depending on what the mine standard are. The trick to that is you want to make sure that each length of pipe isn't just single wrapped and it's not hooked to a carabiner attached to the screen. You want it to be double chain wrapped 360, hooked up to a rabbit ear. That's an engineered, it's engineered for around 1,540 some pounds, or to a shouldered eye bolt. So it all depends on the mine standard. Other things I'd be looking at is Victolic clamps. I want to make sure that none of them on my services are snapped off. I don't want to see any of my water lines leaking. I'll be looking at ground support. I'm looking at the left side wall and the right side wall, also known in mining as the ribs. So my floor is called the bench, my sides are the ribs, and my ceiling is called the back. And that's the mining innuendo. I'm just trying to give our lovely users here simplistic knowledge, because I know when I get into a mine, people were yelling back, ribs, bench, and I really didn't know what they were talking about, Okay. But once again, I'm looking at the screen standard. So if the screen has to be brought down, let's say to the 5-foot standard on the ribs, or to grade line, typically in a mine. Now, some mines vary. Some have it at 8 foot, depending on their ground support management plan. The point is I'm looking at my screen standard, making sure that haul trucks are larger vehicles, didn't rip off that screen, and now we're putting ourselves in a little bit of risk for our walking individuals, because now there's 8 feet of exposed ground that may have been compromised from a piece of power mobile equipment. And quite frankly, I don't know anybody that's 8 feet tall, Pearly, right now in the moment. When a piece of loose comes off, it could hurt them, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my screen now, my ground support in the back. When I'm looking at the back, which is the ceiling, I'm looking at the ventilation, whether it's Mechanicaid, G-vent, or soft wall. What I mean by soft wall is just a 48 inch to 52 inch, a flex tube, if you will. It's just a soft wall, and as the ventilation comes on, it'll expand out. If it's soft wall, there's often many, many rips, many, many tears. And when the corrugated section for around turns happen, sometimes the clips are snapping off, which means we're robbing CFM from respected headings. And that CFM is very simple. It's called diesel particulate matter. It's a carcinogenic. We need to provide our miners that are in the mine with adequate CFM, which supersedes the amount that the power mobile equipment is requiring. Because, quite frankly, because it's carcinogenic, right? So if I had, give you an example. A Toyota runs, I believe, 11,600 CFM. And then there's a scoop, for an example. So that's a Toyota. Then we have a scoop tram, let's say, for an example. That scoop tram is running, let me just see here to be conservative, 43,000 CFM. So 43, let's say plus 12 to be 3, 4, 5. 55,000 CFM is required to run a Toyota simultaneously with a scoop truck. With a scoop tram, sorry. Okay, well, now I'm looking on the vent survey, and the vent survey says, well, my heading only has 51,000. Well, now I know I'm over capacity. Somebody is sucking in diesel particulate in this typical event that I just gave, right? Mm-hmm. And with all the rips and tears, I'm making sure that the integrity of the soft wall is still intact. And you know what? I might make a call and say, hey, we're going to do a button-up sleeve here, or we're going to replace a section, because I want our lovely employees to have maximum CFM in their headings so they can go home at night as well and not have long-term health effects from diesel particulate.
Okay, great. Now, when something goes wrong.
Okay.
What is it like in a mine?
Okay. So first of all, in a mine, the universal language of something going wrong, it's called stench gas release. Okay. It's a stench release. Now, stench, when it's released in a mine, it smells like, and I'm going to put this very clearly, pungent, rotten, stinky, warm eggs. You can't miss this smell. It almost it would make you almost want to gag. It's a pungent, stinky, rotten egg smell. It's called ethyl mercaptan is the name for it, but it's also called stench gas. That's universal in every mine that you're talking about here in Canada. So at Caribou Mine, let's say right now, you and myself, Pearly, we're underground now. We're on the 2400 level. Great. We're doing a little job right now. We're up on a scissor deck doing a vent repair. And you and me look at each other and we say, oh my God, what is that smell? We say it's stench release. We're trained and programmed in mining universally. And this is at most every mine I've been to. When you smell stench, that means emergency. You don't know what the emergency is yet. You're waiting on the radio because eventually the dispatch or security might do an all call, and they may notify us of the event. But this is what we need to do. We need to get down from the scissor deck. We have to essentially shut the master switch off on the scissor deck in case it's a fire. And we make our way to the nearest refuge station in closest proximity to where we're working. And we notify people along our path, Pearly, that we do meet. Hey, just to let you know, Pearly and myself, we're down at the 2400 level. Let's go. We're going up to the refuge station over at the north end. And we notify people along our path, okay, about the rotten egg smell. And in that time, we're very calm. We know there is an event, but we don't know what it is. But dispatch usually, they will make a call. They could tell you, hey, copy, I'll call. Toyota is on fire over at the South 720 well. I repeat, Toyota is on fire at the 720 well. Stench gas was released at 12:05 p.m. Please, everybody, make your way to the nearest refuge station and wait for incident command notification. And that is what happens. So we're all going to make our way to the nearest refuge station, which is fire retardant. We got an adequate amount of food. We got water. We got a hardline telephone. We got an emergency contact list. We have cards and picnic tables in there, and we have fire clay, and we fire clay the door after all parties are entered. That's this process. Yeah.
How many refuge stations would there be in a mine?
Well, I mean, every mine has
size.
Yeah, every mine has different ones, but I'll tell you the newer mines, like Newmont, for an example, they have permanent refuge stations, which are shotcreted in place. They've blasted out a location, and then they've ground supported it to standard, and then they've even shotcreted it. Those are permanents. Then they bought portable permanents. So then the richer mines, they have what's called Tommy Knockers is one brand. Drager is another brand. And, Tommy Knockers, Draggers, there's so many different types right now. I call it the Ford, the Dodge, or the Toyota. But what these essentially do is they provide you positive pressure and, adequate, supplies. And they even have an airlock. So you walk in and they run off both mine power and they run on battery power, which is amazing. So if the mine ran out of mine power, you could actually still operate that unit on battery power.
Now, you say adequate. What is adequate? What happens, for example, if you were to have, heaven forbid, a rocks cave-in?
Yeah. So are you talking about a seismic event currently? Like if we had?
Yeah. Say if you were to have a seismic event.
Okay. And give me a scenario. Elaborate on that just so I can give you a response.
If you were to have some sort of seismic event that would block off your normal escape or your normal exit from the mine, how would that kind of situation be handled?
Well, I mean, that could happen, but we have numerous different exits, right? You'll never have a mine with only one. Our geological mapping, the geological mapping that our wonderful engineering team does on our behalf. You wouldn't just have like one. So an example is if we were working, let's just say 2400 level Pearly, and we went to the first refuge station, and lo and behold, a seismic event occurred where the back fell out and we couldn't get into that refuge station. We would be donning what's called a self-contained self-rescuer. I want you to know what that is. It's mandatory to have on all of us. It provides us typically 20 minutes of positive pressure oxygen. We would don that. It goes over our face. And then we would look at our ventilation survey print that we have in our hands. Ventilation survey is going to give you every location underground of the nearest refuge stations in closest proximity to you.
Okay.
And it's going to say what CFM these headings are. Okay. So then we would simply, I mean, I'm a calm guy in emergency. However, anybody who knows me would probably tell you, I'm a pretty hyper gentleman without an emergency, but it's just who I am. I can't change I'm very, I guess, extroverted. But if I came to that point where we got to a refuge and there was a cave in and you and I couldn't get into a refuge station, I would make my way donning my apparatus to the second refuge station.
So all mines, including, say, a potash mine, would have more than one way in and out?
Most definitely, yes, because there's egresses as well. And when I say escapes, what's happening is mines have egresses, which is essentially, they're like a ventilation raise, Pearly, that might go straight up, offset, straight up, offset, but essentially they would get you up to another level.
Oh,
they
right.
can bring, yeah, they can bring you to other levels, which then once again you could find another refuge or another egress itself, right? So every mine has numerous egresses, and the newer mines are actually putting what's called a safe scape a safe scape looks like, how do I say this? Well, it kind of looks like Mechanicaid G-Vent polyurethane. It gets placed inside that hole. So then when you're climbing up, you're protected from the ground as well. But also, a lot of people don't like heights.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a fan of heights, to be honest with you. And I find the safe scapes, as you're walking up every 20 feet, then there's a ladder, or a gate. You'd open the gate, get up, and then you'd be able to close the gate, and then have yourself a little rest. And I find it's nice for the people that are scared of heights or, scared of heights. Some people are scared of tight spaces too, right, Pearly?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's definitely copious amounts of way to get out of a mine, and the geological mapping and our wonderful engineering team, especially the engineering team at Newmont, we have some amazing professionals. They do a great job at always keeping our vent prints and our ventilation surveys and our egress surveys. They print them off on a weekly basis for us and have them updated.
Do you find miners worry about that sort of thing at all or not? Or that's just sort of accepted as part of the job and part of their life, working underground? Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I want to be totally honest with you. Miners do worry about that, but it depends on the mine. So I'm going to talk about, I worked at a mine. I don't want to name the mine, but there was a mine that Redpath worked at, and the geological mapping, quite frankly, it was very scary. They were having seismic events on daily basis. They were losing 3,000 to 4,000 tons per day in secured ground. Their only control measure at the time was time. Stand back. If we hear nothing else in the next 10 hours, let's go back in and continue the ground support. So quite frankly, that mine, there was a lot of men that were scared, including myself, but including men that work with me. I know men that were in the mines 40 years that told me I never seen ground move that way. I've never heard it move so fast. You'd put ground support in with MD bolts, and you'd see the bolts recessed back into the wall by 2.5 to 3 feet 12 hours later.
Wow.
Like, we're talking about ground support where the ground was taking so much stress that it was snapping the heads off the MD bolts, or should I say the Super Swellex. It was scary. And, the client did the right thing in their defense. They invested in a seismic monitoring system, but, that was a stope sequencing mine that highly depended on their stopes for survival. They were a base metal mine, and I've yet to name who they are because I respected a lot of people that work back there. But quite frankly, after the mine went on care and maintenance, it sat for a while. And you can think of it just like a house. Our house is good now. Let it sit for 2 to 3 years, and then we come back in, and you're going to notice the floors are moved. The baseboards seem to be coming off the caulking. You can look at your crown moldings in your house. It's little things that you're seeing, but nobody was in it. So that's how I relate. I mean, it was on care and maintenance. By the time we got back in, the geological mapping was totally transformed from what it used to be. So to relate it to what you said, do miners worry? They worry when there's certain typical mines that may or may not have the right answers to provide of why is this happening? What are we going to do about it to prevent it? And, at other mines right now, Newmont, Musselwhite, fantastic ground. They have such a great, strong, competent ground. You'd be hard pressed when you scale to not see a spark coming off the end of the tip of the scaling bar.
So as a safety professional, just so as we go to wrap things up in the next few minutes, what's your biggest concern about safety in mining?
Pearly, I'm only as good as my team. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm only as good as my team. I had another project superintendent who was one of the best I've seen. All of a sudden now I have this new gentleman. I just hired him from KL Gold. He's my safety supervisor. We're talking about, do the Pittsburgh Penguins win the cup if Jaromir Jagr and Mario Lemieux and Peter Nedved isn't there in 1993? Probably not. They're not going to win the cup. So the team that surrounds you, you're only as good as your team. And what scares me the most is that I know a lot of people, they are retiring, and I already realize that I am one based off my age group. A lot of people are looking for me for the answers, and I'm fine with that. But I give answers that I know are right. And if I don't know the answers, I don't like to be seen as incompetent, but quite frankly, I know people pay me to know the answers, but if you don't know, I don't think there's I don't think there's value in needing people. Okay. There's true honor and value in needing people. And I've been blessed to have good mentors. So I guess my biggest fear is that soon all of our amazing professionals are going to retire, and we're going to be left with what we know currently, right? This is what I know currently. I just feel like I have more to do, and I have a lot more questions to ask. But that is a fear of mine. And the other fear of mine, and I'm going to be honest, my second fear, we have to move past safety needs to work. Ops, safety, quality, production. We're a cohesive team. Some projects, or should I say some organizations, not the one I currently am with, but they see safety as compliance, right? They may see it as a 25 years old, a guy got hurt, he's in the safety department. I'm sorry, but it's progressed since then. The people I know isn't because they have a sore back. They're highly educated people who truly value health, safety, and environment and risk, and they value getting us to question and go against push against the envelope. The way the things always have been done, this is the way we've done it. Hey, great. But let's take the time to see if we can change it a different way and still become successful, right? So I'm a little nervous, where the future is going to hold in terms of some of the talent that's leaving. And I'm a little nervous at myself. I want to make sure that I'm ready, Pearly. I want to make sure that I want to be the best that I can be in my field, and I want to be recognized as an ambassador. I just don't know if I'm hoping that day doesn't come, too soon. I don't want to be too pompous, because I still have a lot of questions, and I'm learning every day. After 15 years, you learn every day, and I'm just very grateful that I've had such a supporting organization like Redpath that, quite frankly, invests in me, and I have a coach and mentor, Chris Betzel and Jamie Creswell, fantastic safety professionals. These are people you want to live up to be. So
now, as I travel the province, I hear over and over again the concern that you expressed, and that is about retirement and a lot of the real experienced people retiring. Now, I'm sure the question will be put to you at some point is, how do we deal with that? How do we handle the fact that, yes, we know that a lot of our experienced people, very experienced people, are going to be retiring? How do we get ready for that? Is there really anything we can do?
Well, there is what we can do. First and foremost, they can mentor and coach us now versus later, which that's what they're doing. They're coming to sites more, it's called visibility felt leadership, coming to coach us more, calling us more, following up with us more. We're doing planned inspections more, job observations, incident imaging, strategy sessions, risk work. We're doing it together. And that's what's preparing us, preparing us to be in those positions. They're involving us more in deep dive audits at the corporate level, really almost giving us pieces of what they do in preparation.
You're a guy of many talents, and certainly you're very busy in a lot of other ways as well. You're also on the board of directors of WorkSafe NB as an employer representative. Talk to us for just a minute about your involvement there, and what kind of messages are you sharing with the other board members?
Yeah, so the other board members, the truth is we're dealing with a lot right now. I won't lie. There's a lot on the table, Tim Peterson is our CEO, and quite frankly, he's really invested about culture and building organizational culture, trust, and their new motto, or should I say their succession and guideline for success, people, prevention, integrity. they're out there in the communities. They're holding these anonymous surveys on culture, which they're getting fantastic reviews back. We're listening to certain organizations in the community for, whether it would be whether it would be QP or whether it would be, different, the nurses union, for an example. They're listening very tentatively to the field, I call it, employee labor concerns. What are your concerns? What are things WorkSafe can do to be better? And quite frankly, and of course, we're looking at some things that I can't speak about due to confidentiality, but I will tell you, they're putting people first. The organization right now, I'm not sure what WorkSafe was 5 years ago, but what we have here is a well-oiled and tuned team that is focus-driven, and it's focused off the better. One fatality is too much. WorkSafe New Brunswick is going to want and will be the safest province to work in from a risk standpoint, from a total medical injury standpoint, and I believe they're going to reach that target. They want to be the safest province for anybody to come work in, and they have a goal and mottos and I would say a plan of action to attain that they're proving to me on that board each and every week. I'm flabbergasted by how amazing and passionate the team is, but not only about how passionate they are, how their deliverables are actually measuring up against, we're 64% done this, and this is the due date. They're highly organized. They're highly structured. And quite frankly, I believe that they believe in active, genuine care. And I know they have an open door policy like Tim Peterson. That gentleman there, you could contact him now, and I'm sure he'd pick up his cell phone. He's just one of those guys, right? And that's what you want, transparency with the group. When people have a problem, not only if you want to speak to your frontline supervisor, I'm sure Tim Peterson himself would speak. It's an open door policy, right? So we definitely have a lot on the go, and I don't want to step over terms with WorkSafe just because I am fairly new, and I do have a confidentiality agreement, but I can tell you that they hold the workers and the employer's best interests forward. And the next 5 years is going to be an exciting time with WorkSafe New Brunswick because the stats and the trends, I think we're going to see them. They're going to go in the right direction. And I'm already seeing more employee engagement around this community. And you know what? People are proud to work for WorkSafe New Brunswick. I can tell you right now, they're proud and you know what? Proud and happy. Let's put it that way.
Very good. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. It's been fantastic to talk to you. We could talk all day. Your knowledge in mining is exceptional. Thank you very much for being on our podcast, and we wish you well in the future, and we wish WorkSafe NB, of course, very much well in the future as well. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next week.